You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS Radio, WJFK 1580 AM, or you're visiting us at WMCLive.com for this and for any of our previous episodes. Look for WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter, too, and you can now stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast anytime, worldwide, at iTunes. This week, our guests include the new president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, who is re-energizing the entire reproductive rights wing of the women's movement. Then a most unusual, quite unforgettable young comic. And last, a familiar figure for vintage feminists, a singer whose voice and message is still loud and clear. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. There's a whole list of items inside the headlines this week, so we better get right to them. The first is an update from last week. You will remember, perhaps, that one of our guests, terrific Sally Kohn, was introduced accurately and referred to herself as a commentator for Fox News. I called her our girl, our woman, our girl, inside the lines of the adversary. Well, that's no longer true. A few days later, she and Fox News parted company. No, it wasn't just because she did this show. And she now is where she's actually a much better fit, at MSNBC. So look for her there, and we wish her all possible good luck. There's a case that's been around for a while that I've been meaning to spotlight inside the news, which you may have heard of. Certainly you have if you live in Wisconsin. Alicia Beltran is the name of the woman. She's 28, and she was 14 weeks pregnant when the police arrived at her home, the county sheriff's actually, and took her in handcuffs to a holding cell. She thought she was doing the right thing when she had gone to a prenatal checkup and had described a previous pill addiction for painkillers that she had had the previous year, which she had carefully and deliberately ended on her own, something that was later verified by a urine test. But she encountered an apparently skeptical doctor and a social worker who didn't believe her, and they accused her of endangering her unborn child because she refused to accept their order to start on an anti-addiction drug since she was no longer addicted. So she was taken in shackles before a family court commissioner who brushed aside her pleas for a lawyer, and to her amazement, she found that the court had already appointed a legal guardian for the fetus. She was charged under a Wisconsin law known as the Cocaine Mom Act, when it was adopted in 1998, in which child welfare authorities can forcibly confine a pregnant woman who uses illegal drugs or alcohol and refuses to accept treatment. Now, with her case as Exhibit A, that law is being challenged as unconstitutional in a federal suit this last October, hoping to set an important precedent, because Wisconsin is one of 4 states, along with Oklahoma, Minnesota, and South Dakota, with laws that specifically grant authorities the power to confine pregnant women for substance abuse. But it doesn't matter, because other states, many other states, in fact, use civil confinement laws or child protection or assorted criteria to force women into treatment programs or to punish them for taking drugs. She herself, on threat of jail, remained at the treatment center until October 4th, when the center sent her home. She lost her job. She's pregnant. She now hopes to find temporary work over the holidays. Her due date is January 15th. And she was quoted as saying, "I'm scared they'll come back after my baby's born. This is supposed to be the happiest part of my pregnancy, and I'm just terrified." Certain elections are looming, notably in New York City, where I am, and in Virginia. In New York City, we face an interesting situation where it's pretty sure that Bill de Blasio will become the next mayor. And he is good, he's excellent, and infinitely preferable to his opposition, and it's a Democratic city. But the most interesting thing about him is his family. In particular, his wife, his tiny bird-like wife, who is half his size. He's like 17 feet tall. Her name is Shirlane McCrae, and she is one of us. She openly was a feminist activist in the late 60s and early 70s, called herself a radical feminist, proudly refers to it even now. And in fact, she was a member of the Combahee River Collective, the famous group out of Massachusetts, which was the first black feminist lesbian group to talk about feminist theory from a black lesbian feminist point of view. So she bodes very well to become the new First Lady of New York, and this should be extremely interesting. In Virginia, it doesn't look as if there'll be much of a surprise, although complacency is always a bad thing. But Terry McAuliffe has a double-digit lead over Cuccinelli, and well, he should, because things are really not so great when you're rooting for Terry McAuliffe as a hero of women. Still, it could be worse. It could be Ken Cuccinelli. His comments on reproductive rights and on women's rights have made him, I don't know, worthy of being somebody running for office in Saudi Arabia. Which brings us to Saudi Arabia. As you know, the women drivers defied a ban and threats of severe punishment and claims that if they drove, they would be sowing sedition. And they drove. 100 of them drove. Because we learned this through a contact of an old friend, Madeha Al-Ajaroush, we did an interview with her from Riyadh and didn't want to hold it until this program. And so we posted it alone as a freestanding extra exclusive, and you can find it at WMClive.com and on iTunes. Since that interview, she's been in touch again, as has some of the other drivers. She is one of the original drivers who first drove in 1990, and then again in 2011, and then again last week. In her follow-up updates, she said that nearly 100 women all across the kingdom had driven, that 2 had been pulled over and made to sign a pledge not to drive again. They go through this masquerade of pledges. She herself has signed a pledge 3 times now, and then she gets back and drives. 2 more were detained because their male guardians could not be located to sign them out of detention. You remember that women are permanent minors in Saudi Arabia. And Madeha encouraged listeners to please keep sending supportive emails and copies of protest emails that you send to the Saudi embassy. Send them to OCT26, OCT26 driving, OCT26 driving at gmail.com, or tweet to at OCT26 driving. She says, we do want the world to see us and stand by us and empathize with us. It's a small world, and every woman out there is our sister. And in case you have lost your grip, which would be understandable, on just how bad it is in Saudi Arabia, I recommend an excellent piece, a feature on the Women's Media Center website, WMC.com, womensmediacenter.com. A feature written by Soraya Chamali. And Soraya reminds us that not only are Saudi women prohibited from driving, but they're electronically monitored and restricted from crossing the border without a male guardian's express permission. And now men in the country are informed by text of the whereabouts of their wives, sisters, mothers, daughters, or other female wards in this elaborate system of electronic surveillance that the NSA would find enviable. Although the monitoring system has been in place since 2010, last year it was expanded so that men now no longer have to request the information, but receive it through push technology unsolicited. It requires no man sign up for it. It's now automated. This is the most amazing meshing of 21st century technology with 5th century attitudes. The very last word in from Madeha was that all the activists are now being followed, with one male supporter having been detained since October 27th, the day after the demonstration. She wrote, at this point, we are working hard to meet with some officials to, I imagine, get him out and to explain that they were simply exercising the basic human right of freedom of mobility. She also adds, your follow-up is very much appreciated, which means keep those cards and letters flowing. We need to take a short break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. When we come back, we'll talk with a woman who feels strongly that the reproductive rights wing of the women's movement has been on the defensive far too long. She plans to take it on the offensive in just a minute.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome back. Our upcoming guest, Ilyse Hogue, the new president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, has been in that post just a couple of months short of a year. She came to NARAL with a lot of expertise and skills in both electoral and advocacy campaigns, which she had honed as the Director of Political Advocacy and Communications at MoveOn.org. She also helped build and lead Friends of Democracy, which was a political initiative to reduce the influence of big money in elections. She serves on the board of several national organizations, including National Domestic Workers Alliance, and she is a frequent guest on CNN and MSNBC and now writes regular commentary on CNN.com and The Nation and other outlets. And that commentary, like much of her writing, long before joining NARAL, focused on issues of particular concern to women. Ilyse, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Oh, Robin, it's great to be here.
Well, it's great to talk to you. You've been the new leader of NARAL Pro-Choice America since it was February, right?
February 1, almost 9 months.
Almost 9 months. Almost 9 months, eh?
Exactly.
And you've done some really wonderful things there. I mean, you've shifted the gravity from reaction to proaction. It's been very interesting to watch the young, strong feminist energy that you brought. So I want to ask a couple of basic questions. You've said that you hoped to shift the conversation around reproductive health, and you think that the full nature of reproductive health is changing. Say a little more about that.
Well, I mean, I think a couple things are apparent to someone new to my position. One is that this is a movement that's been on defense for way too long, particularly when we consider that the majority of this country is actually with us on reproductive health and reproductive freedom.
Yes.
And so we've got to actually own that space, be unapologetic in our advocacy for women and families across this country, and actually demand that policy and elected officials actually stand up for what most of this country believes in, which is the fact that women can make our own decisions about our own lives in conjunction with our family families and our doctors. And so I think that's critically important. The other thing that I have noticed is that there are a number of different ways to go on offense. Of course, we absolutely need the kind of new policies that we're seeing in California, which in a time of shrinking access expands opportunities for women across the state of California to seek abortion services. But at the same time, going on offense can be as simple as running campaigns to demand accountability from the vocal and vitriolic minority that is actually taking these rights away from women and saying that that's absolutely not okay. We're going to unelect you. We're going to hold you accountable, and we're going to replace you with people who actually represent the mainstream of where this country is.
Yes. More than 100 years ago, Susan B. Anthony said, women should hoard their vote and vote as a bloc. And we have never really done that. I mean, there is a gender gap. Obviously, we vote differently, sort of organically. But to marshal that power, since we are not a minority, is a very exciting thought.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that right now. In fact, in days, we're going to have the results of the Virginia governor's race, where we've got one strongly pro-choice candidate in Terry McAuliffe and one candidate in Ken Cuccinelli who represents absolutely the most extreme position on these issues. And in fact, Terry McAuliffe, as we are taping right now, is ahead, but what's driving his lead are women. It's not just Democratic women, it's independent women and Republican women who understand that reproductive freedom is not a partisan issue. It is absolutely a values-based position that matches where we are in our lives today in this country.
It also is the people who try to separate it from, quote, equal rights or equal pay or any of the supposedly more acceptable subjects that affect women specifically. It's crazy, because if you cannot control your own reproductive basic human right, freedom, you can't do anything. That it is the home plate,
Yeah.
Home base.
Robin, I actually say two things about that issue, and you and I are right on track with each other. One is that it is just not reality for women to separate economic security from reproductive freedom. In fact, in this country, if you don't have reproductive freedom, you cannot have economic security. And unfortunately, in the current legislative climate, if you don't have economic security, you cannot have reproductive freedom.
That's right.
You are being expected to travel, take time off work without pay. And so, we really do a disservice to women across this country when we separate the two. The other is what we know is that when candidates run proudly on their stance for access for reproductive health and reproductive freedom, they win. Now, this is the opposite of what they get told by their conservative consultants, but the data shows in race after race, when they call out their opponents as being extreme, when they stand up loud and proud for women's access, they win.
So that's another reason to be proactive and strongly out there. Tell me which, just alert our listeners, because they're an activist group, is there any, the special cases that at the moment are getting your attention, or that might need mobilizing letters, support, or just notice? Absolutely.
I mean, too often we focus only on the electoral and the legislative realms, both of which are very, very important. But we have to remember we live with three branches of government. And right now in Nebraska, there is a judge coming under fire who withheld a young woman's constitutional right to abortion from her because she is 16 years old. She had petitioned the court, Nebraska is a parental consent state, and that she was not ready to be a parent, that she wanted to get her education, that she wanted to be able to live her life. And the judge said, sorry, you're not mature enough to make that decision. Now, this is a judge who has, right, but you're mature enough to have a child.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a judge who has a long history of anti-choice activism. He was the head of Lawyers for Life in his state, and we've got 85,000 people who have signed a petition that this judge should be sanctioned. And if he is, it would send a strong message to all of the judges, including and all of the people in position who are actually abusing their positions because their job is to hold up rule of law over their own personal politics, and too often that's not happening. And of course, all eyes are on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And Americans expect our judges to uphold the law of the land, and access to abortion is the law of the land.
Yes, the ignorance about female existence, but I mean, in this case, particularly female fertility, is just always mind-boggling. Recently, there was a Saudi cleric, a fundamentalist cleric, who opposes women driving in Saudi Arabia because when women drive, you understand, it pushes the pelvis up and they don't have healthy children. Now, this is laughable to us, except, of course, we have Todd Aiken and his ilk, So judges like this are particularly dangerous. I mean, they are activists legislating against women's lives.
Absolutely. And we're tracking another case in New York where a woman is fighting for custody of her children, and the evidence that her ex-husband is using against her that she is an unfit mother is that she chose to terminate a pregnancy.
Oh, my
One
God.
in 3 women in this country have had abortion. That would be a frightening precedent to set. And you know what? I think people have had enough. The 85,000 petition signatures that we've received on this Nebraska case, guess what? They're not only women. They're men too, because this is a family issue. At the end of the day, it's an issue of fairness, and it's an issue of holding true to the values that make our country great, which is that our rules and laws are based on what's good public policy. It's based on science. It's not based on personal preference due to your own ideology.
Exactly. Oh, you're terrific. And and the work that you've done of bringing NARAL Pro-Choice America into a bigger presence online, excuse me, is also extremely valuable for young, fresh energy to be at the helm of what are already established women's movement organizations is a very exciting thing to watch, because the reinvigoration and the transformation is evident. And thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Robin. Thank you for what you all do at Women's Media Center. It's so important.
Well, thanks also for being with us today on Women's Media Center Live, and keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Now let's check out news you can use. Last week I mentioned United Nations Security Council Resolution 2122 as the new strengthening arm of Resolution 1325 passed some years ago. 1325 mandated that women had to be included in all peacekeeping and peacemaking operations of the UN. But it was not specified as to what that meant, and of course it was very rarely, if ever, enforced. The new one, Resolution Security Council SC 2122, supposedly had a lot more teeth in it and specified what roles women should play and what roles women were playing. So there wasn't time last week to really go into them in any detail, and I wanted to do so today because it's of particular importance to those who are our listeners abroad, but also to those of us in the United States. This past year, women were included in every formal peace negotiation process, led or co-led by the United Nations. Gender experts were present in 85% of delegations, and in each case, representatives of women's civil society groups, otherwise known as NGOs, were at least consulted. Women are playing a much more prominent role in crisis prevention, most notably in Darfur. Since 2009, gender crimes investigators have been a part of all UN commissions of inquiry. And this year, 3 out of 10 peace agreements in UN-supported process included provisions for women's political participation or protection. Now, I think that 3 out of 10 is deplorably low, but in the world of the United Nations, where we're in twilight zone, it's remarkable progress. And it is more than the year previous. Analysis of women and security is now included in most reports by peacekeeping and special political missions. I get nervous at the word most. And the Secretary General has established the policy of zero tolerance towards sexual-related abuses committed by UN personnel, something that, of course, still happens with terrifying incidents. The Secretary General is always establishing the policy of zero tolerance, so that does not impress me hugely. Also less impressive is the level of women's participation in police and military deployments. The figures of 10% and 3%, respectively, remain way below the modest, very modest, unassuming target of 20% that had been set for next year. And just as disappointing, only 4 of the 27 peace-related field missions are led by women. It also shows that we needn't conflate effort with accomplishment. We have to take another short break. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. And when we return, we'll talk with a woman who is one of, if not the, first of America's Muslim women stand-up comics. And that's not the only thing funny about her. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
And we're back. My next guest is Maysoon Zayid, an American actor, comedian, and activist of Palestinian descent who was born in New Jersey. You've seen her in numerous things, from soap operas, if you watch them, to the Adam Sandler film You Don't Mess with the Zohan, to being a guest as a political comic on Countdown with Keith Olbermann and on the Melissa Harris Perry Show. No matter how many times you've seen her or haven't, you will be seeing a lot more of Maysoon Zayid. Welcome, Maysoon. Marhaba. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me on, Robin. This is a real privilege.
Well, this is a real delight for me. You are you are a oneer. You are absolutely unique. You are you've described yourself, in fact, as a Palestinian Muslim virgin, perhaps not anymore, with cerebral palsy, who is a comic. And the combination is absolutely and totally irresistible. How did this come to be?
So, from the age of 5, I dreamt of being on General Hospital, a soap opera, and I pursued this dream relentlessly. And when I graduated college as an actress, I realized that Hollywood didn't hire disabled ethnic fluffy people. But I did notice that women who weren't cookie-cutter supermodels, like Whoopi Goldberg, Rosie O'Donnell, Ellen, they all started in comedy. So I decided I was going to become a comedian so that I could get on General Hospital. But I had a problem, and the problem is I have cerebral palsy, which means I shake all the time. So I'm a little bit Michael J. Fox, a little bit Shakira. And I needed to, when I went on stage, put audiences at ease, because if they just saw me, they can't really tell what's wrong with me. They think maybe she's drunk, maybe she's nervous, and neither of those things work for comedy. But I didn't want to be defined as disabled, because I had never defined myself as such. So what I did was I came up with my intro, which was, I'm a Palestinian Muslim virgin with cerebral palsy from New Jersey, and if you don't feel better about yourself, maybe you should. So I buried it into all the other things that I was also oppressed from. And as you said, things have changed. I got married, so I'm no longer Palestinian.
Oh, you're terrific. You're terrific. So you began, what, in comedy clubs?
Yeah, I started off, I graduated college, and I became a glorified piece of furniture. I was an extra on Law and Order, and I was And then I talked to my acting coach, the amazing Tanya Berezin of Circle Repertory Theater legend, and she and I talked about the comedy thing. I went to Caroline's. I signed up for a comedy class. I took a 6-week comedy class, and then really just very surprisingly, my comedy career immediately took off. And I've been a professional comedian for over 10 years now, and it's the only official job I hold.
Wow! But you've also carved the paths. I mean, you're really the first Muslim woman comedian in the United States, and the first person, male or female, ever to perform stand-up. Am I right in Palestine and in Jordan?
Well, I always say I never know if I'm the real first. I'm the first documented to do so. So when I started doing stand-up comedy, I can't guarantee you that in the 60s and 70s there wasn't a Muslim girl before me who did it. I don't know, but I'm the first documented person to do it. And then when I started doing comedy in Palestine and Jordan, I didn't realize what I was doing was unique. People ask me what I did. I run a program for disabled and wounded refugee children where we try to mainstream them into the school systems.
Beautiful.
And when I went there, people would be like, well, what do you do in real life? And I would say, I tell jokes. And they didn't believe me and they didn't get it. So I was like, why don't we do a show? And in 2002, I did my first stand-up comedy shows in Palestine and in Jordan. And apparently it was groundbreaking and no one else had ever done it. But what I love about this is after I started doing stand-up comedy, I brought out all my counterparts. I brought Dino Bidala and Iman and Hosseini and all these other comedians I work with. And no one realized that stand-up comedy was a man's game because they had seen me do it first.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's like when my kid was little, he once asked me, can men be doctors?
Exactly.
Because the only ones he'd ever seen were women.
Yeah.
But I mean, people will think, my God, what is to be laughing about? I mean, given all the strikes that are against you, I have to say that in the time that I spent in Palestine, largely in the camps, which you and I have talked about before when we first met, I found that in the face of unspeakable grief and displacement and oppression, Palestinian women have, of course, a gallows sense of terrific humor.
I write a column for the Daily Beast on Palestine, Israel, and I have never in my life written a column for them that's not oozing comedy. And the reason that I use comedy is this subject has been beaten to death, yet the majority of people still have no idea what the conflict is about.
That's right.
So what I do is I try to, it's like Palestine for dummies, and what I try to do is make it an enjoyable read so that when people are laughing, they step back and go, wait a minute, this is reality. I'm laughing at reality. This is really happening.
Yeah.
And comedy is like most legends of comedy know, comedy is pain plus time. So if you fall down, it's not funny until you get up and we know that you're not injured, and then everyone's sitting laughing at you.
Right.
And I feel like Palestine is such a ludicrous situation. It's such an insane situation where to me it's very, very simplistic, but it's not that simple to anyone else. So I make fun of the bigotry, the racism, the segregation, the violence, the oppression, to say to people, do you understand how ridiculous this is? And this is something that we as Americans support.
Yes. Well, that's brilliant. I mean, and also, let's face it, humor goes where nothing else can. It comes in under the radar. If you can laugh at something, it means two things at least, crucial things: recognition and perspective. So you're doing amazing, I mean, you're an artist, but you're doing amazing political work, both in terms of the politics of disability and the politics of Palestine-Israel.
It's stressful. I like that you brought up identity, and I just want to say something really quick about that. I've been really blessed not to be defined. I'm not a disabled comic that only does the disability gig. I'm not a female comic that sits there and tries to be like a guy, and I'm not an Arab comic that is completely unrelatable to an American audience. And I think that that's one of my blessings, is that I do cross over to a lot of different areas. So it allows me to look at everything very simplistically as an equality issue.
Yeah.
Because whether it's disability, women, or Palestine, Israel, it all comes back to equality and human rights. It's
right.
like a direct straight line.
That's right.
You know. So I'm doing a lot of diverse things, but one of my biggest passions in life is quite controversial, and that's I'm against able-bodied actors playing disabled characters on television. And I think it should go the way of blackface. Me and my cohorts call it cripface, and we find it really disturbing that it's still present and acceptable on mainstream television and film, and that disabled actors are almost non-existent in these forums.
Well, you've just made an instant convert, because I hadn't, stupidly, and I apologize, I hadn't thought of that. And lately I'm thinking of that more and more since the Parkinson's diagnosis, believe me. But except for Michael J. Fox, who is Michael J. Fox after all, I can't think of a situation in which a disabled actor has played a disabled character. And I can think of quite a few in which non-disabled actors have played disabled characters. So this is a good campaign.
There's a lot going on. And what's going on is in the 80s, there was actually more of us on television. You had Corky on Life Goes On. You had Jerry on The Facts of Life. You had a deaf character on the soaps. And I watched them disappear, and I watched this habit of able-bodied actors playing disabled roles and winning awards. Now, in 2013, we have amazing shows like Switched at Birth, which uses deaf actors only in the deaf roles. And then we have shows like Glee that use disabled actors in the background and then have the mainstream disabled characters played by able-bodied.
Yeah, that's not good.
For me, I didn't really realize how intense this was until I started working on Countdown with Keith Olbermann. And I was a full-time on-air contributor for Countdown with Keith Olbermann. It was my dream job. I combined politics with comedy, and I was happy as a clam. And when his show ended and he went to ESPN, I started looking to get back on TV. And what I realized was there is not a single disabled co-host or anchor on all of daytime television and all of broadcast news.
Wow.
And the only two disabled people with permanent gigs on the news are on Fox.
Oh, that's really upsetting.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's an uphill battle where I say, the disabled are the largest minority in America. Why has there never been a disabled co-host on The Talk or on The View or on Good Morning America? That is, someone who we're just not there. And no one even considers us. So you have really advanced, liberal, amazing people like Melissa Harris Perry that say, I don't invite disabled guests that are in a wheelchair because my studio is inaccessible.
Oh, you're kidding. And
on air, instead of saying, I absolutely unequivocally insist that MSNBC
make the studio accessible.
She announced that she doesn't invite them in studio because of these three little stairs.
Oh, dear God.
And on your show, you're an ally. You're an ally. How is it that we've been completely forgotten? And you didn't just email this. All it takes is a $150 ramp.
I am one. You're speaking to a disabled radio host. If that cuts any, that's a beginning. And I will become more
we're
so.
Beautiful for radio.
Yeah, yeah. Don't you think? Yes.
I've heard that. I've heard that my Gumby mouth is beautiful for radio.
You're beautiful for radio. Listen, you're beautiful from any angle. You're juggling the most amazing set of plates. It's fantastic. Before we go, and we have to, fortunately, where can people find you? Is there a website where they can find you and try to book you and sit and find out about where you're playing or your shows?
First and foremost, I'm on the Women's Media Center SheSource. So if you go to shesource.org, you can find me there.
Perfect.
And I have that site, and I think it's awesome and makes broadcast news not have an excuse for not putting on women experts, so I'm blessed to be on that site. And you can also go to Maysoon.com, my name, MAYSOON.com, and everything is there, from videos to photos to Arabic writing to random cartoons. I mean, it's just like a collage that I built myself, and they can go to Maysoon.com and know where to see me live and see my TED Talk, hopefully.
Fabulous.
December 5th, I'll be at TED Women Conference speaking in San Francisco, so stay tuned.
Okay, we will stay tuned. And will you come back and talk with us some more again?
Anytime you want me to come talk, I'm happy to.
Oh, you're wonderful.
And there's a lot more to talk about.
There definitely is. So, shukran Atir. Thank you so much for being with us today on Women's Media Center Live. Take care, Maysoon.
Robin, thank you so much for being a trailblazer and a leader. I appreciate it.
It's break time again here on Women's Media Center Live, where I am still Robin Morgan. When we return, Holly Near will be here. Oh, I didn't quite mean that to be a rhymed couplet.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome back again. One of the pleasures of this program for me is that I get the chance to meet and introduce to you women I've never met before. Some of them famous, some of them not. Some of them who have been long-distance runners at it for a long time. Others new minted activists. And sometimes I get to have a reunion with a long-distance runner that I haven't seen for a very long time. This is just such a pleasure coming up. Holly Near. Welcome, Holly Near.
Oh, it is my pleasure, dear Robin. It really is.
You are celebrating your first album in 3 years. What is this? The 455th? Actually, it's like the 31st recording. It's called Peace Becomes You. And you've been touring. Tell about the album.
Well, I thought I was going to retire, and instead I went into the studio and recorded a double CD, so don't ever pay any attention to me. I never know what
Who
I'm
retires?
going to do next.
Schmitire. Artists don't retire.
I know.
Feminists don't retire.
Fun. That's the truth. That is so true. And it's so nice to do this work. I'm in my 65th year, and there's a kind of maturity that sets in vocally as well as in terms of skill and craft. And
of course.
I surrounded myself by fabulous artists. And I remember watching Ronnie Gilbert, because I'm now older than she was when I first started touring with her.
Yeah.
But I remember watching her enter into vocal maturity that I was so looking forward to, and now I have landed there. It's there's something happens to the voice, a kind of richness, a woodiness that takes over, and it was just a great pleasure to be in the studio and also to be able to sing whatever I wanted, from a song from My Fair Lady to a CeeLo Green song to Dr. Bernice Johnson Regan material to Farron, the full spectrum, and just take every song and interpret it through my life. In my younger years, that I was extraordinarily naive, which is a beautiful thing, because if I had known what I was about to do, I would never have done it.
Yes,
I would have been terrified. So it was the naivete that allowed me to be brave and to be as involved as I was. And I look back, I didn't realize that I was involved in so many things that were firsts, things that had never been done before.
Totally.
But I didn't know it at the time. So that, I wouldn't give up that at all. But there is something very calm and lovely about this time in life. The freedom to not spend quite so much time laying down the bricks that one has to step on.
That's right.
Because that was really the definition of at least in the so-called women's music movement that I was a part of. And the next generation of women are coming along and are building the next set of bridges and
That's
roads.
right.
But I now get to walk on what was created. But the downside of it, it's also a kind of invisibility.
because there's so many women who worked on this now who are not able to work as musicians. They can't get jobs. They've had to go into other fields because the success was so great that it opened the doors for a lot of the really vibrant, wonderful next generation women to move right into the mainstream.
Of course. Yeah,
So all of that energy did not stay in the movement. It went out into the mainstream.
Right.
And the upside is how fabulous. We had no idea we'd be so successful. And the downside is that it creates a kind of, I almost want to say, post-traumatic stress or loneliness for women now who were part of making that happen, but who actually can't make a living or can't get acknowledged for it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I do know what you mean. I mean, when you started Redwood Records, that was really the first. That was the first feminine. That predated Olivia, didn't it?
Yeah, by a year maybe. What I understand is that it was the first, just the first independent recording company, male or female. That just didn't happen yet. And then, of course, a few years later, more and more artists started independent companies.
Right.
But we started it because out of necessity.
Right.
The kind of lyric that we wanted to sing, or I should say I don't know about everybody, but the kind of lyrics that I wanted to sing just weren't acceptable in the mainstream yet.
Yeah.
So I actually thought, well, I'll just make one record. I'll just do this.
Oh, yeah, that's how it always starts, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I'll go back to doing what everybody else is doing, and that just never happened.
Well, you were being talked about very lovingly a few months ago when my co-founder, sister of the Women's Media Center, Jane, was here, Jane Fonda, because in that very first, the Free the Army tour, I think in 1970 or 71, it was a anti-Vietnam War roadshow, and she, of course, was one of the main organizers, and you were part of that too. I mean, you were.
I was. That was like a university for me. I had been doing hair on Broadway, and the students were killed at Kent State, and there was just so much going on, and I was not from a conservative family. I was from a progressive family, but still, at the age of 19, 20, 21, those were very big events that were going on. And to go on the FTA tour with Jane and that whole crew was really, it turned my life around.
Yeah. Well, let's move into the present now. So what's been happening on the tours? Because I don't know about you, but I find that a whole lot of young women come and men who are, as I tend to put it, pissed off for all the right reasons. And I find that there's a whole new, I don't like to do it in terms of waves because I think it's one great long unstoppable tsunami, the consciousness, but there's a whole new energy, I think, afoot. Are you finding that?
I think so. I don't think those people are necessarily coming to my concerts, which is too bad. They're kind of, they're brought by a mother or a grandmother, an aunt. But for some reason, because I am not working predominantly through the university system, the concerts are still outside of that. A lot of that generation have not found their way to this music. When they do, they're kind of jaw-dropping because they actually don't know that it happened. So I did a large event with Noam Chomsky a little while ago, and there were a lot of young people who had come to hear him who just had no idea that there was this kind of music going on at all, and that was really fun. But without, so I think I would have to go more to them than they come to me, and I need to think more about that.
Okay.
But energy-wise, I'm quite astounded by the next generation, by the Occupy movement, by young feminists who are on the campuses being so brave because they're not getting the support that we maybe came to know.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, I think they're out there quite.
They are, but the online activism is also just exploding. That's true. You know, I mean, it's amazing.
Stylistically, I'm not a youth-oriented, that's not the kind of music that I do. So when they actually come, they enjoy it. The same way when my mother and father would take me to something when I was younger. It wouldn't have been my choice, but I enjoyed it.
Right.
And I find that my main job right now, all this sounds kind of, like an ARP magazine advertisement. I feel like
you couldn't sound that way if you tried.
that I'm ending up being a source of support and inspiration to older women and men who are retiring and are trying to figure out how to reconnect their activism.
That's wonderful.
And I feel like that's the main work that happens at concerts where people walk out and go, oh my gosh, I'd sort of forgotten who I was.
Right.
And they're reconnecting with their best self as a result of the concerts because they got distracted by everyday life and by raising children and by making a living and all these things that happen. And the concert, for a moment they want to go retro on me. They say, whoa, this is just like the 70s. And I said, well, actually it's not. It's really like 2015.
Exactly.
This is not. Don't go retro on this. This is not nostalgia. This is ongoing social change.
In the now. Before we go, be sure and give the website so people can find where you're playing next.
It's www.hollynear.com. That's pretty easy. And the tour schedule is always there.
Holly, and it's been a joy to talk with you.
Well, thank you very much.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. A friend wrote me recently, concerned and scared over an article she'd read in the Daily Beast about the resurgence of the so-called men's movement or men's liberation movement. Now, well may you think, what men's movement? It's called daily life. It's all around us. It's patriarchy. But no, these are men who feel oppressed by the women's movement and discriminated against, and particularly white men. Well, I'm not afraid of these wingnut guys, although it's true they're real, just like fundamentalists and Islamists and rapists are real. But the so-called men's movement has been trying to gain traction since the late 1970s. It tried again in the 80s. Remember those drum-beating sessions for manhood, bare-chested in the woods? And it periodically resurfaces flailing for yet another attempt. But today, who gives a tinker's damn about Robert Bly now? He was all the rage during the drumming stuff in manhood circles. The more virulently misogynistic they are, the faster they flare and then flare out. So complaining, by the way, as this article does, that they're now garnering mainstream and major internet coverage and strength, both of which, by the way, are not true, that's a little disingenuous when the writer is covering them for the Daily Beast, which itself is a mix of the serious and the sensationalistic. So what I said to my friend were three things. One, the most dangerous time for a battered woman is when she's making plans finally to get free of him. Then out comes his full venom. And I think that's true of people en masse as well, of movements, of ideas. So this means we're making strong headway. And all you have to do really is look around. With all the problems we know we face, still, look at the looming Hillary campaign and likely win for president. Look at the Senate women using their muscles. Look at the polls on abortion, health care, and so forth. Look at the United Nations adding Resolution 2122 to 1325. Look at the IMF and World Bank adopting feminist rhetoric. It's lip service, and I'm no friend of either one of those institutions, but this is the way change begins there. We are the ones influencing the policymakers, not the manhood movement. Slow, but sure, but it's us who are bringing pressure to bear. And two, history, demographics, and sheer numbers are on our side, and they know it, they being the manhood movement and the policymakers, who are sometimes smart enough to know the inevitable when it stands in front of them, that is, women. And three, I told her, be not afraid of dolts and morons who are obsessed with finding their manhood when they ought to be looking for their humanity. And that's our program for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS Radio WJFK 1580 AM, or you've been visiting us at WMCLive.com for this and for any of our previous episodes. Be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the podcast of our show anytime. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams Chancellor, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thank you for being with us. Join us next week when we'll hear from Deborah Spar about her new book, Wonder Women, Sex, Power, and the Quest for Perfection, and from Stacy Smith about some major new research findings. And, ta-da! Witty, wise Kathy Najimy will be here. Meanwhile, look for us on Facebook and Twitter for news of exclusive breaking news segments, surprise upcoming guests, and future shows, only here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio and WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.